Yes, I know Breyer has delved in. So if you want to lead us with
wanna
an
lead?
article that was one of many stories that we've kind of seen recently about the gaming industry.
Yeah, well, a lot of these are coming from the same person too, Jason Schreier.
Yep.
Schreier. Okay, is it Jason Schreier or Jason Schreier? We've literally had him on
Pretty
this
sure it's
show,
Schreier.
and I still don't remember.
Pretty sure it's Schreier.
Is it
Breyer.
Schreier? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Schreier Breyer. Oh, okay. So
Schreier
now
Breyer.
there's like
Perfect.
There you go.
So he wrote an article detailing game testing at Treyarch, specifically for Black Ops 4. And basically, you know, he cites a lot of examples, but it seems that the game testers over at Treyarch are treated separately from the rest of the development staff. Insofact as they have to park in separate areas. They're not really allowed to interact with the regular development staff. They don't eat with them. When there's a party, they were, invited for 20 minutes and told to go back to work. That kind of treatment. They're paid $13 an hour, which is like, ridiculously low pay. What is minimum wage in America right now? Is it?
I think they're passing laws for
It's around
2020
there.
to get it to $15 an hour.
Okay,
Somewhere
it's around
there.
But yeah, it's like reading the article. What it seemed to me was they are purposefully segregated away from like the main staff at Treyarch, to possibly to try to keep them from moving up in positions. Like these are contractors; they're not like full-time employees of Treyarch themselves. But it's bizarre to me that like why wouldn't you want like somebody who's excelling in the testing position to move up into a development role?
Yeah.
I don't know why it's done. I've heard about it. I've heard about it before from other companies. I think back in the day, it used to be a lot of companies did that, where there's like a separate bathroom and separate eating places. But yeah, I'm not really sure why it's done because I don't know what it's trying to achieve by keeping them separate. But yeah, it's like contractors, mostly test contractors that I've heard it be done with, which is what this story is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the only thing, I mean, like it's definitely not a right thing. I think the reason it might be one of the ones, the reason they do it is because a lot of the time they'll bring test people in quite quickly. Because when I used to work Microsoft, when I worked at Forza Horizon, for example, we started off as quite a small team, and then they ramped up as we were getting closer to launch. They ramped up pretty fast and hired a boatload of people to the point where our team went from being like 10 people to like 80 people, and then that was just like the test team. But then the second it shipped, that number just gets cut like drastically, and those people are out the door again.
Right. And you're not paying those people benefits or anything like that, right? Because they're contractors.
Contractors. Yep.
Yeah, that's the difficulty as well. So I was a contractor as well. I was like Microsoft. I think Microsoft's one of the companies they employ like 2/3 their entire workforce on contracts. However, that being said, Microsoft's probably one of the better examples because like their testing situation was for the most part pretty good. But it's just one of those weird situations where maybe from like a test point of view, for example, you don't necessarily have to like have as many qualifications. So it might just be like sometimes when it comes to ramping up drastically, you can just grab anyone. You'd be like, you know what, you play games, you can kind of run through this area like. All you need to do is run against this wall and make sure there's no holes in the wall. So you can kind of pull people in quickly. And what they found, it's not exclusively the case, but what they found sometimes in the past is that if you have like leaks internally, it invariably comes from someone that's just joined the test team because they've overheard something or something. So again, not that it makes it right, but I wonder whether that's their mentality might be like, oh, we brought these guys in because they're going to do like a month's worth of work. So we kind of don't want them to be exposed to the wider stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
That would make that I could see where you're just bringing someone in for a short period of time. Maybe it's 3 months. Sometimes it's less. Sometimes it's more. And you just don't want them to hear something that they could tell everyone. I think the only problem is even if it's done in that way, and that's a good intention, I think they do get mistreated sometimes by full-time employees. Because there's kind of this look as this person is not one of us. This person has to use, the separate bathroom and the separate eating area. So there tends to be kind of an abuse of power that can happen in those situations.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I guess the gaming industry has always been full of secrets and all that. So that kind of perpetuates some of those workplace kind of conditions because they don't want casual talk about a project that's supposed to be secret. being suddenly shared with somebody who's just there for a month to do some testing. So
for good reason too. Like in that industry, like there's reasons to keep things secret. Like whether it's a new piece of technology or a new way of doing a fighting system, or the story. You know, like those things get out, and then people might be less interested in the game, or
they get the wrong impression.
Systems that you built get taken and used in another game. And your game suddenly doesn't have that unique shine to it.
But there's definitely better ways to do it. Because for example, because in that situation you never want to make, because the test team, while they might not have built the game, they are so incredibly important. That's one of the things. Yeah, that's one of the things that always kind of frustrates me about. Whenever you see these kind of documentaries where they're like, oh, let's go and visit this game studio. It's like, it's always super exciting because they'll be like, oh, let's go and speak to the character artist and the game designer. It's like, yeah, but don't forget, you guys might have made the game and you guys have done incredible work, but without the test team ensuring that your game isn't bug free, there's crazy things that skip through the gaps. And test a lot of the time they're just forgotten about. People don't even know about them, right? But there's ways to go about the right way. When I worked at Microsoft and they were working on Xbox One before we were allowed to see the console, they, instead of just kind of treating contractors like, oh, you're not allowed to be here, they just had that on a separate floor that only people that were NDA'd up to the roof were allowed to go and see that. And that was different because all right, cool, but behind that door is the next Xbox, but we're not allowed to be there. That's cool. But that wasn't just a contractor thing. That was just there was probably on the floor there were only probably about 10-15 people that were allowed in there. So that was super senior stuff. But then you're that's not so bad because it's not oh, you guys just have to sit in your corner. It's no, there's a corner. It's the opposite way around basically. It's this is the corner, this is the locked corner, and everywhere else you're still free.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it is a really weird thing. They definitely I don't know. I don't understand it from a business point of view, but obviously from contractors and full-time employees definitely have they have different rights. Full-time employees and themselves will obviously have all the bonuses and stuff. They'll have all the company stuff, company cars and stuff like that. Whereas obviously contractors, and I get that, you wouldn't have a contractor come in and be like, hey, here's your car, here's your bonus stuff. But it's still a very weird discussion, because when you get to those times of year when it is everyone's having bonuses and stuff, or there's other things going on. I think the one thing that kind of stuck with me was when they launched Xbox One, they did and I get you couldn't do this because if you got hundreds of contractors, but they gave all full-time employees the custom white Xbox One that says I made this when contractors worked on it. But the issue is the way that it was delivered. When I worked at the company, it was there's a room and they call all the full-time employees and they're like, hey, here's your Xbox today, and then they go home with it. One contractors are sitting there just okay, cool, man. Cool. I don't want an Xbox or anything. It's not I worked on this too, but that was a weird thing. But yeah, it's contract versus full-time is an interesting dynamic.
It's an interesting topic. I know a lot of companies have kind of changed that around now, and they're trying to make sure that they're respected just as much as their full-time employees, and they don't feel like they're being disrespected in any way. And there's been a lot of people on Twitter coming out about, yep, this is how it was for me when I started in test. And it seems like a widely used tactic to keep them separated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sorry, I just hit the space button and stop my recording of the show. So Nick, whoops, sorry.
Did you
the
restart?
Saw some stuff.
Yeah, I restarted.
Okay.
Again, this has brought kind of talks about unionization in games development. And I think that's an interesting conversation. It's a conversation though that has impact, right? If everybody who works on games starts making more money and has better benefits, that means the cost of game development goes up. And how does that affect the cost of games? Are we going to have to start spending more on games? Are there going to be more microtransactions in games? How does that work out? I think that honestly, I'd like to see people make better money, better than $13 an hour when they're working 75-hour weeks, like was reported in this article. And if I got to pay $100 for a game, I'm okay with that. I've been paying $60 for a game since the 80s, and that price hasn't gone up. In fact, it's gone down. I remember paying $70 or $80 for Sega Genesis games.
I remember that too. Yeah. I feel like the model needs to change and shift. And like some of these free to play models they make sense because the people who are heavily invested in the game are willing to spend a lot more versus somebody who has to like commit to $60 and then find out that they don't like the game 5 hours later. Then they're like, they feel burnt about their purchase. And I
that works for some games, but like for a game like Bloodstained, like I don't see a free to play model really working.
Yeah, true.
It's a single player experience, and you play it for 10, 20, 30 hours, but then it's over. You're not coming back to it month after month, day after day.
And I think there is also a good point of if there's a union and prices go up and wages go up, companies will just outsource to places that are cheaper.
Yeah.
That's very true. I mean, that's basically what has happened in every other industry in America.
Yeah. It's rough.
Yeah, one of the other things, just kind of go back to test for a quick question as well. Like, I always think to myself, they should invest more heavily in maintaining the people they have and kind of moving them up the chain, because one of the things that to sort of like cycle back to Microsoft actually did it really well. Like, test was run much like all the other jobs. It was like a 9 to 5 job, unless of course there was like slight overtime for crunch and whatnot. But like, whereas some I knew people that used to test at Sega, and they would actually have like a day shift, night shift model. I mean, like, having test run in that situation where like you've got people, I get it if you've got a big game, but having test run in that model where you're having people testing around the clock at like they literally come in at like midnight and they go until like 7 a.m. Like that's like test should never be seen as like just this grunt work that can be done anytime, because I feel like in situations like that you never even get the best results out of people. If someone's trying to test your game, like, and they're sleep deprived, like you're gonna miss everything, right? Whereas I feel like the way that it was run when we worked at Microsoft was actually quite clinical for that sense. But the weird thing about that is that different aspects of it. So for example, when we were split between so obviously I'm from the UK, so the UK team, they built up some of the test team, and then some people would remain present. They would then move up a little bit and they would kind of manage smaller teams. But the US side of Microsoft, like at least when we were there, no one would ever be in a test position for longer than 6 months. Like once they've done that, they rotate them out and they get new people in. It's like I mean, I get maybe doing that for some stuff, but it's like, surely if that person's been there for 6 months, testing isn't just turn up and play games. Like, again, you learn tool sets, you learn everything you got to do to do your job. Like, that guy's now got 6 months of experience, and he's like far more valuable than he was on day one. And you just want to kick him out the door because you're on a 6 month cycle.
Yeah,
like,
doesn't make any sense.
That makes no sense to me. Yeah,
people don't do testing jobs because they're flipping burgers. They're like they're trying to get into the industry, and so they want to gain those skill sets. They want to gain the connections, and then potentially move out. Doesn't Bungie do? Bungie has like a different philosophy, right? And
they've done pretty well. I mean, of course, I can't say if it used to be that way or anything, but the way it is now, it's definitely much better. Employees feel respected, and Tomo started as a Japanese localization test. He'd play the game, make sure that it's all good, and now he's lead of combat. So he started there and moved up quite a lot. And I've seen that from the people that I've seen that in a lot of cases where people start on test and then they get put on to, the sandbox team, or they get put onto a Crucible team or Gambit team or whatever it might be. I've definitely seen people move up.
Yeah, because they're inherently interested in the product and they want to actually make a good product and see it grow. Right? Like it makes sense that the people who are starting out in testing are trying to break out in the industry. So to rotate them just doesn't make sense at all. It's weird.
It doesn't. Yeah. You get to know someone, you get to know how they work, and they get to know all of the people they work with. And that's just going to make a better product because they all know each other.
Yeah.
They're going to work better together. And yeah, I definitely agree with that. They should be investing in their employees and trying to move them up if they absolutely can. Of course, contracts always exist, but a lot of the time the contract is there. At least with Bungie, that's as far as I know, a lot of contracts are there because that's a way of kind of testing someone out and being like, does this person fit in this team? They do. All right, let's put them on the team permanently.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. I mean, it's going to change obviously over time. And I know a lot of people have been talking about like a potential collapse happening in the industry where a reset button hits because of some of the conditions and how the games are being made. Like you guys hear about this? Like there's going to be a bubble.
No, I haven't actually.
It's like Jason Schreier talks about it quite a bit. How like we're heading towards like the conditions can't continue, and eventually you're going to have a complete
Right,
exodus
yeah.
of a lot of industry talent who just can't work in the industry anymore because of burnout. It's
I feel
I
like that
think
happens all the time, though. Like
it's so important that
it-
companies start to try and manage things as best as they can. You know, some crunch probably can't be avoided if something is drastically wrong and the game's about to come out and you have to fix it. You know, in those situations, of course, but there's a lot of time where it's like just normal developing of a game where they have to crunch, and that shouldn't be the case. I know Luke Timmons, I believe it was, talked about eliminating crunch at Bungie and how it was a process of really eliminating that. And I think that's super important. And I think just understanding that people in test are developers, you know, they're integral to your team. They're very important. They're integral to your community and how much they enjoy the game. And it's just about setting an environment of respect. You respect everyone for what they do. No one's going to get this elitist attitude of, well, I'm full-time and you're just a puny tester. We're going to treat you terribly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just people need to try and look out for other people, and the overworking thing has been really bad in some cases.
I don't know if I buy that narrative that we're heading toward a crunch or a bubble because people are overworked. I mean, this has been the way video games have been developed since the beginning of video games.
Yeah, but there's been peaks and valleys of this. And what happens is you have like several years of not interesting stuff getting released because of a backlash of those conditions. Yeah.
Is there a, like, when?
I don't have any information in front of me that I looked up specifically on this, but I know Jason Schreier's talked about it quite a bit about how the industry is just unsustainable. Like there's a few companies like Bungie that have been trying to not do that, but
for
a lot
a single
of them
person.
A lot of the companies
I think
out
it's
there.
unsustainable. I think it's unsustainable for a single person. And I think that's why you see such high turnover in the video game industry. But it is sustainable for Activision and EA and the companies that are profiting from it. And I think that's why these systems work like they do. And it's sustainable for game players because, you know, they're getting games at affordable prices.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not sustainable is individually for, you know, people who are working in this industry and have like this huge burnout rate and are working like unmanageable hours for not enough pay, watching like their bosses get these like $15 million bonuses, you know, while they get, you know, they get squat. You know, that's where it's unsustainable.
But that's what Schreier's talking about, is there's a burnout factor to this and a turnover rate.
Yeah.
Eventually you've exhausted the creatives.
The pool.
Yeah.
Not when you got every kid in high school like hoping to be in video games. But that's the problem, right?
There's a knowledge
everybody
base,
wants this job. Everybody wants this job. So you've got this unexhaustible set of new people who you have to pay very little money to.
But
that's why you need a union to protect the people that come in. Yeah, there is a knowledge base.
If everybody leaves who has that knowledge base and you have a bunch of people who have never done this before, then you have a season or a 10 years or whatever of some crappy products that get made. And so that's the
people at the top. The people at the top, or even like the game developers that you see, like the known name game developers, like that you'll see move from studio to studio, like the heads of games, like the people that you actually that are in the articles, like, you know, Bloodstained. We know who made Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
But we only know one dude's name. There's like, you know, 200 people who worked on that game that we have no idea who they are. And those people are all looked at as disposable, you know?
Right. But at a certain point,
because there's 100 people that'll take their spot.
At a certain point, it's going to run out, though, if they burn through them that quick. Unless companies start adopting like Bungie does, where they are trying to avoid that.
My kids very much would like to become game developers. And I had a conversation with them not that long ago saying, like, this is a job that is awful. Like, you know, like it sounds like it's creative and fun and you get to play video games all day, but all you hear out of this industry are reports of people like getting overworked and underpaid. And, you know, you could take those skills and go work on Adobe Acrobat and get paid twice as much money.
I mean, that's
but it's
definitely
just
true.
not
Like
as
you
much
could go
fun.
to Amazon and like if you're an engineer in a video game company, you go to Amazon and work on systems or something as an engineer and you will make a lot more money. You definitely make more
Right.
money in other industries for similar skill sets than game development.
But there's there's a seemingly inexhaustible supply of kids. They go learn how to program and they want to work in video games. But then they get taken advantage of because there is an inexhaustible supply. Like if there was a union who was protecting these people, then you'd find that I would imagine you wouldn't find that to be the case. But as it sits now,
I don't agree that it seems infinite, that there's just like unexhaustible supply. Like I think at a certain point they will run through enough creative people, because not everybody can make a Dark Souls. Just straight up, you have to have talent. You have to have people. Right. You can't outsource Dark Souls. It's not going to happen. There has to be talented people who are very passionate about the stuff. And if they get treated like dog crap, they're not going to stay in it. They're going to go do something else. So
it's an interesting conversation. I think that the industry is heading to a change, whether that's individual companies making a change because they realize that we haven't actually been treating these people very well, and crunch is awful.
Yeah.
Because we're hearing stories all the time and articles are coming out, and then from following that, people come out on Twitter saying, this has been my experience too. It's been awful. So I think we will see
across the board
some kind of change.
Yeah. My experience was awful, and the CEO assaulted me in the lobby of a hotel. Yeah, sounds like a great industry to get
really
into.
Bad in the game industry.
And they got a $10 million bonus
that they gave themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the trunk of his Lamborghini.
Yeah. Like those guys, they're not leaving.
Oh, clearly not.
The testers, the people who want to get into the industry.
I think that's why they're rotating them that much, because they don't want those people to come up and take their job. So they're like,
that may be part of it.
Let's keep the system going, keep exhausting until it's depleted, and then they'll just jump ship into some other executive company. Yeah. Well, I think we is that the episode?
Yeah, we gotta end on something more.
End on a high note, right?
Terrible. This is man. Now I'm just gonna go and sit in a dark room and cry.
Right? Just
what was really awesome? Here's a high note.